Welcome to Nothing Yet Studios. Today, I'm sorry about that little change right there for you. Today we are going to be doing a review of Total War Warhammer. I talked about how I wasn't disappointed with it. I thought it was a good game, and I figured I'd give you my opinions on it from both a Total War perspective and a Warhammer perspective. Because before Games Workshop screwed us, I was a pretty big fan of Warhammer Fantasy. If you see me looking off to the right over here, that's because my other screen has a preview, so I can tell if you can see the books. But I used to play Warhammer Fantasy. Let's see, I have all of these armies now because when people got pissed off at GameStop, or not GameStop, sorry, Games Workshop, they sold a bunch of their crap, and I got a bunch of it for free. Or I didn't get a bunch. I got 2 armies. Well, actually, just 1 army, really. That one I got elsewhere. I just haven't played it a lot. So I play Bretonnia, Skaven, High Elves, Dwarves, and Lizardmen. And then I picked up Wood Elves from a friend of mine whom I need to pay, actually, for those Wood Elves. He let me buy them and then pay him later, and it's been quite a while. So actually that reminds me I need to get him that money. But anyway, so the thing about Warhammer is it was a fun system. There have been a lot of debates on it versus Age of Sigmar. I think the problem that most Warhammer fans had was while Warhammer had its issues and it was growing slowly and they needed to really do something about streamlining the rules, making it easier to get into. A good example would be X-Wing is a very, very tactical game. Armada is a very strategic game, but their rules are a lot simpler. Movement is a lot simpler. The rules are just super easy to learn. For example, my wife loves X-Wing. We play X-Wing. We'll be playing in a tournament tomorrow at 2 o'clock at our local hobby store. And we love X-Wing. It's a lot of fun. But it's super easy to learn. There's a lot of tactical depth to it, but it's really just easy to learn how to play. And that's the thing with Warhammer. This is like the basic rulebook you got when you bought the starter set. It was $100, I think, and you got like a really small Skaven army and a really small dwarf army. They were kind of cheaply made models. They still looked really cool. Later, oh no, it wasn't dwarf and Skaven. Sorry, it was High Elves and Skaven. They looked nice, but they were cheaper models. They weren't quite the same quality as their higher end models were. But let's see. The number of pages with rules just for learning how to play in this rulebook, and it's not like Age of Sigmar. I mean, this rulebook, that's what you're looking at. I mean, every page is almost completely full of words. Let's see, War Machines. All right, almost there. All right, before you get to battlefield terrain, which you need to learn as well. You have to learn battlefield terrain. I mean, you have to learn... Sorry, I dropped something. You have to learn this whole book, alright? But before you get to battlefield terrain, you had 115 pages of in-depth rules. Very in-depth rules. It's not an easy game to get into. And then on top of that, you go back and you have 150 pages, including the battlefield types, the battlefield scenarios, the building types, how to build your army. How to build your army was actually pretty easy in this in comparison to other ones. The army list was pretty basic. There's a lot of reading, but really all you had to know was like you had to have up to 25% of your points for lords, up to 25% of your points could be heroes. You had to have 25% or more for core. So up to 25% you could use for lords, up to 25% you could use for heroes. You didn't have to have heroes or lords. You had to have 1 leader for your army, but you didn't have to have a bunch of them. You didn't have to have very many points, although you wanted to, because it wasn't quite Hero Hammer, which was like one of the earlier editions that I never played. Warhammer at one point was effectively called Hero Hammer, and your heroes were a lot like they are in the game, and we'll end up talking about that, where they effectively didn't die. You would run a hero into a brick of infantry, and they'd just sit there and just pound and pound and pound away at people. One of the things we're going to be doing today also is I got myself It's a it's a wheat, German wheat ale. It's supposed to be very good. So I'm gonna be trying this today while we film. So yeah, we're gonna try this out. I'm a huge fan of German wheats. Hef's Weihenstephaner is my favorite. I'll show you guys a bottle here in a minute. So we're gonna pour this. See if we can get ourselves a nice head. Cheers. Let me see what it is. Smells good. Oh wow. Oh wow. That is very good. Bavarian wheat beer. Very good. I definitely give it my stamp of approval from my local shop. This is $5 a pint. So yeah, it's not cheap, but it's very good. Very good flavor. Gotta love it. Okay, so now that the pouring is out of the way, I'll go ahead and show you guys the company that puts out the heft that I normally drink. This is the world's oldest brewery. It was established in I think it's 1040. Yeah, 1040. It says right up there. This brewery, if it'll focus, it's not gonna focus. There we go. Since 1040 AD. This beer is based on the 1516 purity law. So this beer hasn't been around since 1040. That's their dark hef, which I got the Corbinian this time to try. I've had it before and I liked it. We'll see if we like it again. But anyway, off of beer, back to Warhammer. Back to the matters at hand. So Warhammer was a fun game. I heard a guy at one point say when you played Warhammer, you felt like you were playing the rules, not really playing a game, and that was very true. You almost had to have an agreement with somebody beforehand that you wouldn't argue about the rules, and that you would just come to simple understandings about it, because there was a lot of issues with the writing. They had different people write different rule books. It wasn't the same person that wrote all the rule books, which I can understand that, because, I mean, let's be honest with you. This rule book is for the Wood Elves. It was written by a different person than who wrote, you know, like the Dwarves or whatever. And here's the thing, like, with this rule book, not all this is rules. You get a lot of history. So you're not just getting, like, a book of rules, but you're also getting a book of history, explaining the race so that you can understand who it is that you're playing. And then you get a bunch of like well-painted miniatures, pictures in the back that show you how professionals have painted them before, so that if you want to base your army off of an army that they have, you can, or if you just want to kind of see, you know, what sometimes when you're looking at a model, you're like, is that a different piece than this, or is it the same? And you can go in there and look, and if they have painted the same color, it's probably the same piece. But yeah, it's a great game, a lot of fun, enjoyed it. The modeling hobby was good. Had a pretty stiff price point. I mean, you pretty much had to spend a good $400 or $500 to be solid, to get a solid army for your army. Now, granted, for the most part, you never had to buy again. If they would reprint your books every 3 to 4 years for your one army, and when they reprinted the books for your army, they would usually come out with 1 or 2 really solid models that you would go out and you'd buy, you know, another $100, $120 worth of stuff. But I mean, it wasn't too bad. Like Magic the Gathering, for example, most people, they buy 2 or 3 boxes every set. So in 4 years, you've spent double the money at least. So it's not too bad. It's just hefty to get into. You can't go spend 20 bucks on a starter deck, have your friend give you some of his crap rares, and now you're started. It takes a little bit. So anyway, they crumpled it. Games Workshop, instead of fixing it and trying to bring people in, they just trashed Warhammer Fantasy and jumped right into Age of Sigmar, and people were pissed because instead of having their tactical game and their strategic game, Fantasy being the strategic and Warhammer 40k being your tactical squad-based game, now they have effectively 2 tactical games. They're fast-paced, easy to play. I never got into Age of Sigmar, watched people play it, and This isn't. I know that you're probably thinking after you've sat here for a long time, oh man, why are we talking about Warhammer so much? And I did kind of rant a little bit, but the point is, I want you to understand, when it comes to Warhammer, it's a big deal for the people that played it. They loved Warhammer, and for those of you guys who like Warhammer, I want you to understand that I know a little bit about it. I played it a little bit, and so when I compare parts of this game to the tabletop game, and I say, you know what, the tabletop game isn't here anymore, but this game pretty much fulfills a lot of your wants and needs. It isn't the same thing as tabletop gaming, but it is a lot of fun, and it is solid. You'll know that I have a general idea of what I'm talking about. I wasn't some pro, but I played a little bit, and I enjoyed it. And then for you guys that, y'all never played Warhammer, it's important to understand why Total War Warhammer is not exactly like Total War. I've heard complaints online. I've watched some reviews, and people have been like, well, it's a good game, but, I was hoping they'd make Warhammer more realistic. I was hoping they'd make Lord of the Rings more realistic, too. But, they didn't. And that was sarcasm. Because you don't take a fantasy world and make it more realistic because it's got the Total War thing on it. You want realism? That's great. There's plenty of realistic Total War games. But this is an awesome franchise that they have a great opportunity to do something a little bit different, be artistic with, and have some fun with. So, with very little waiting, more waiting, I think we're going to get back into the video game, and I'm just going to show you guys. It's good. It's good. Alright, let's see here. First we need to change the scene back over to my gaming scene and open this. Alright. Okay, so when you look at Total War Warhammer, when you launch the game, it comes up with their Total War little thing where it's got all the different Total Wars that you own in your Steam library, and you can launch any of them from it. But once you launch, you get into the game. This is it. Very simple. Very, very clean. Campaigns, battles, options, done. Nothing complicated. Just so you know what you're looking at on graphics, you're watching ultra quality at 720. That's weird. Let's put that up to 1080. I don't know why it was at 720. I've been playing. My game has been a lie. There we go. We're at 1080. That would explain why it wasn't showing a full screen. My graphics card is an R9 380, 4GB from XFX Double Dissipation. It was pretty cool. I'll have to give a review on XFX soon, because I had to RMA 2 graphics cards in a row to them, and they really took care of me, and I greatly appreciate it. Very solid company when it comes to support, in my experience. But anyway, back to Warhammer. So I have a lot of campaigns. You won't obviously have the continue campaign or load campaign option. Well, you would have the load campaign option, but the continue campaign if you don't have a campaign. So if you go in to start a campaign, you go into your select a faction. I like the way they did this. They've promised a bunch of free cool stuff, and I'm hoping that some of that free cool stuff, I know they've said you're going to get more lores of magic, which is cool. Just to give you guys a heads up, from the Warhammer perspective, they only have the obvious battle magic in here. You're not going to get a lot of stuff like lore of light, lore of shadows. A lot of that stuff you don't get. Lore of beasts is not in here from what I saw. Of course, I haven't played the Greenskins very much at all, and the reason for that is because I've spent like 200 plus hours playing everything else. But you have celestial wizards, you have fire wizards. I saw lore of life. I think Bretonia gets lore of life, but I'm not 100% sure. Obviously the dwarfs don't get anything. So the Empire, let's see, the playstyle down here kind of tells you what they do. Plentiful confederation options, allowing other Empire factions to be merged with the Emperors via diplomacy. I don't know if that's new. Rome 2 gave me a really bad taste in my mouth, so I went back to Shogun 2 until this game came out. I didn't play Attila, and Rome 2 I played 2 hours of, and I got kind of tired of it. I just didn't enjoy it. Part of the problem was when I first got it, my graphics card wasn't good enough to play it. The computer I had could not play Rome 2. But then after I got a graphics card that could play it, and I started playing it, it was just kind of disappointing. I didn't really like it that much. There's a bunch of bad reviews on it, and I just didn't enjoy the game. I didn't like what they had done with the major and minor settlements, and it was a hard learning curve for me, and I was in a different place in my life, and my dog died, and I'm just kidding about the dog thing. It really, I just didn't, I don't know, I just couldn't get into it. I guess it was because I loved Rome 1 so much. Rome Total War is my all-time favorite Total War, and Rome 2 was just, it felt so weirdly different that I just had a bad taste in my mouth. And so when they came out with Attila, I was like, I'm good. And then when I went back, started playing Medieval 2 Total War because they had a good modding community. I actually was playing Lord of the Rings Total War and Warhammer Total War on that. They weren't called that for copyright reasons, I'm sure. But the point is they had modded it out to make it feel, kind of like this. And then I found Mountain Blade Warband, played that, and when they announced this, I was like, holy crap, this is exciting. Let me tell you guys, the factions feel different. They feel very different. Your tactics with each faction, while some of them can be similar, they're going to be different. Like the Empire and the Dwarves feel kind of similar in the sense that when it comes to setting up an economy, you're building an economy. I mean, there's not much to it. Vampire counts as kind of like that, but an economy isn't so much their backbone. The Greenskins, again, like I said, I haven't played them a lot. I got about 12 or 14 turns in. They're cool. I didn't have a problem with them. I was just in the middle of a really hardcore Warriors of Chaos campaign where I was slaughtering people, and I liked it. Also, just to let you guys know, this initial challenge down here, I think is BS. I think they lied. The Empire wasn't too hard, but the Dwarfs on hard was unbelievable. It's supposed to have an easy initial challenge, and I was getting smoked. I had to restart like 8 or 9 times because of the orcs, because the orcs start so strong. So just to give you a heads up on that, don't leave your bases undefended because, and this would be, I guess you could say, the first problem I have with this game from a Warhammer standpoint and from a semi-realism standpoint, hero units and lord units. I love hero and lord units, and they're part of Warhammer, alright? But when you play Warhammer, they're strong. If I put a spearman up against a lord or a hero, the hero is going to just decimate them. 5, 10, 15 dudes versus one lord or hero, the lord or hero is probably going to win if he's kitted out right with magic items and such. However, Grimgor Ironhide is a punk, and I hate him. I lost, I think last time I lost, it was because of him. He assaulted, okay, he had like 6 units with him, and he assaulted one of my level 3 settlements. It was a minor settlement. It was a level 3 settlement with the fully loaded guardhouse, which is one of the things you can take to increase your troops at your settlement. And he smoked me because Grimgor himself was so strong that he would get into it with one of my units, and I didn't really know how to deal with that at the time. I kind of do now, but still, it's still hard. And he killed like 160-something people on his own. And he was like level 4 or 5. He wasn't that high level. So, in some of the factions, and this is the way it is in Warhammer, their heroes and lords are unbelievably strong. They're a little too strong. You can flank them, you can surround them with enemies, and they'll just dance through your dudes and slaughter them like they're not even there. Even with your high level guys. I had a thing of Iron Breakers get slaughtered by a Banshee the other day. Just like they weren't even there. And, Banshees, I understand they have a high resistance and they're supposed to be able to take a bunch of damage, but still, in the Warhammer game, you're trying to break your opponent. And so if you hit a lord, you could get all of the points stacked up to where they would just break and run. And even if they were killing a decent amount of people, if you had somebody on the rear and somebody on the front, and you had full, 4 or 5 ranks on them, you had yourself a banner and all that stuff, and oftentimes they would lose against that many people at one time. And then, one of the things that they did that I think is right, and I've heard people complain about this, is archery. If you shoot with your archers, especially the dwarves are just unbelievably strong when it comes to archers. But alright, sorry. My wife is asking me if I want food. Yes, I want food. Always. Always the food. So yeah, I don't know. The heroes to me, they're not quite fragile enough in my opinion. They can stand, and I understand why they did that. You can't throw them in units. That's my biggest complaint with this game. When I started playing, I was like, all right, how do I embed my dude in my warriors? How do I add my hero to my warriors? I have 2 Thanes and 2 things of Iron Breakers. I want to throw my Thane in with the Iron Breakers. How do I do that? You don't. You can't do that. And so, like, certain things that you could do and kind of take advantage of in the Warhammer universe. In this game, for example, you get magic items. One of them is called the Terrifying Mask of E. All right, what it does is it gives your guy terror. In the game, in the tabletop game, Warhammer, you would give your dude terror not so he could run around the battlefield with terror on his own, unless, of course, he was like on a dragon or something like that. Which they usually had terror anyway, so you didn't give him that. But the point is you would embed him into a group of units, and they would now gain terror because he had terror. And so, like, part of the strategy was, okay, I'm going to give him this item. Instead of his enchanted item giving him, you know, like, some kind of really cool powers or something, I will sacrifice that to give him terror so I can throw him in this unit, and now my entire unit causes terror. In something like basic dwarf warriors, that's great because they're going to break goblins that much faster, which is going to allow you to do things like flank other goblins or whatnot. So, you know, when it comes down to stuff like that, I really kind of wish that you could embed your heroes in units. Now, if they did that, they'd have to nerf the heroes and lords just a little bit because they are really, really, really strong. And obviously, you know, it stops. You can't put a lord on a griffin, or you could put a lord on a griffin in a unit. No, I don't know if a griffin could do it. I know you could throw a lord on a horse in a unit, but they would lose their extra defense, or they wouldn't get as much extra defense. Like, you can't target, for example, a lord that's in a unit. You have to target the unit, and if the lord happens to die in the arrow fire, then he happens to die, which is the way that you counter stuff. And then they could also introduce challenges where, like, you could issue a challenge with your lord if he's in a unit and their other lord is in a unit. It'd be kind of cool to watch, like, your units form up into like a little circle, watching your lords just duke it out in the middle. It'd be kind of cool. But I don't know. I wish they did that. I'm sure they have a good reason they didn't. The game's good. It doesn't break the game. It's not a big deal. It's not one of those things where I'm like, oh, they didn't do this. Warhammer's not all the way there, so screw them. No, it's more along the lines of, like, they didn't do this. I wish they would. Hopefully in an update they might introduce it. It'd be fun, especially for Bretonia. Being able to throw your paladins on horseback in with your knights when they release Bretonia, which is probably the next race they're releasing because it's effectively done. Bretonia is in the game. They just don't have, like, a tech tree. That's the only thing Bretonia doesn't have, is a tech tree. And honestly, their units are a little small. They don't have questing knights, and there's a couple other things that the Bretonian book has that they don't have. But I mean, overall, it's pretty solid. So going back to the factions, the factions are really well laid out. They feel, from what I remember, like the factions in Warhammer. They have their own strengths and weaknesses. For example, the Empire is very specialized troops and a very wide variety of troops. Your foot infantry is spearmen with shields, hand weapon guys, swordsmen, and then your upgrade would be halberdiers, and then and halberdiers aren't even like amazing, but halberdiers can kill large units. So if they attack you with trolls, you throw a group of halberdiers on them, and that's their specialty, is to kill large units. Spearmen are, you know, also another thing to kill large units, mostly like cavalry and stuff. And your swordsmen are anti-infantry infantry. I mean, there's nothing, like, it's just what it is. And so they're kind of specialized to that. If I threw swordsmen on trolls, they're going to get slaughtered. Now, from playing the Empire, it's been a little while because I've played through the Vampire Counts, Warriors of Chaos, and Dwarves since I played the Empire. So it's been a while. That was my first race that I did pretty well with was the Empire. I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure that one of the things I didn't like about it was that even though the Halberdiers were specialized against large foes, like one unit of trolls could almost completely decimate one unit of Halberdiers. And if they got any help from anybody else, they were completely screwed. So while they were specialized against them, they still weren't like really strong against them. But the Empire is really good in that, in the sense that like they have a bunch of troops, they're pretty cheap, and then your specialized troops that are really good, as you can see down here, it has your top units. You have your Demigryph Knights, which are like griffins without wings, effectively, and you get 9 of them, or 18 of them in one unit, and they are strong. They're the strongest knights in the game. They beat everyone, and they're incredible. I tried against the Grail Knights, which is the strongest Bretonnia Knights. I've tried them against the Knights of Chaos with lances, and they do damage, and they're really good. And they're expensive, but they're good, and they're a lot of fun to play with. Because they're kind of like monstrous cavalry. Their cavalry are these big, like, griffin things. So they're poking people with lances, and their griffins are pouncing on people and ripping them to shreds and stuff. It's a really cool unit. They introduced that in their most recent Empire Warhammer book, and I thought they were cool when they did that. Their models are nice, and in the game they're a lot of fun too. I never played with the Luminarch of Hysh. It's a magical thing. But yeah, I never used it, and I never got to the steam tank. It's a really high tier unit that I just never got to because I didn't really have the money, and I was at war with Chaos and a bunch of other crap. So I was just throwing troops at them to try and keep them calm. But I'm sure it's fun. Again, I put 150 to 200 turns in the Empire and never got to these two. So you're talking about a pretty in-depth building tier, a tier tree or whatever. The tiers for the buildings are expensive and really in depth, very specialized. If you want a steam tank, you've got to do certain things to get a steam tank. You're not just going to get it just because you have a lot of money. So the Empire is cool in that. It says balanced unit roster with a wide range of options. Fractured empire, whereby the provinces of the empire are ruled by elector counts, over whom the emperor has tenuous control at best. That's true. You're effectively in the middle of like an ever-raging civil war between all of the elector counts. And so it's kind of like states, but like if we stayed in the civil war and fractured even more, kind of like, I guess you could say, the European Union if they were if they weren't like at peace with each other, because you're just constantly like fighting your own dudes, and then numerous enemies it's an understatement. You have the greenskins to your south. If you're not careful, the dwarfs, the Chaos Warriors to your north. To your west you have Bretonnia, and to your east you have the Vampire Counts. You're in the middle of crap, literally. So, but it's fun. Some of the mechanics for the faction are cool. Offices. You have these offices that create like faction-wide bonuses. As you level up your heroes and lords, you can stick them in different offices, and they'll give you things like minus percentage to your upkeep on your stuff. It's like whenever you play Rome Total War and you gave titles to people, or Shogun 2 Total War and you gave like titles and whatnot. Some of the things in this game that I think you should know is you can't just capture anything. If I go to a dwarf hold as the Empire, I can't capture their stuff. I can only capture territory belonging to the Vampire Counts and Bretonnia, Estalia, Tilia, and the Border Princes. Greenskins, I can't capture anything from them because them and the dwarves have the same kind of stuff. And then the Norska, you can't capture their stuff. Nobody can capture their stuff. Warriors of Chaos don't take buildings. They actually have their own like moving camps. The dwarfs are kind of like the Empire, except they don't have cavalry, which kind of sucks. but they make up for it for having like incredibly powerful ranged units. Their ranged units are so strong. They do a lot of damage. The best thing you can do with them is to set your ranged units up, then set your dudes up behind them, and just shoot at people as they come up at you. And then when they make it to you, okay, so they're charging on your dudes, charge your melee units in front, and then take all of your stuff around to the flanks and just shoot them in the back. You'll win every single time if you do that. If you have kind of a strong defensive setup like that. I didn't play the Empire as a Warhammer Fantasy player, so I can't tell you that they do play exactly like they do in Warhammer, but from what I remember when playing against them, they felt kind of like they used to when I played against them. The dwarves, I can tell you from experience, feel just like the dwarves did whenever I played Warhammer Fantasy. They're slow, they don't break for anything, they will stay there and fight from 90 men down to 15 or 16 men before they run. And that's only if they're heavily outnumbered. If it's just 2-to-1 odds, they'll still sit there and just slug it out with people. They're not overly strong, but they are very tough. They have a lot of armor, and it's all about the gun line. It is 100% about the gun line. You better shoot. You better shoot a lot. If you don't use the gun line, you're not going to win. The organ guns are good. The cannons are good. The grudge throwers are good. For catapults, I was expecting them to kind of suck, but they're actually really strong. They help a lot. I've destroyed a lot of skeleton warriors with catapults. But yeah, they're really good. They have a really good like range of infantry and ranged units. And like I said, they don't have cavalry. They have some annoying mechanics that force you to play dwarf-like, which I'm fine with. Grudges. So you read about, if you've ever read Godric and Felix or anything, or you read the dwarf book, they talk about grudges and how they hold grudges and they're stubborn and they're angry about everything all the time. They're grumbling about stuff. And you don't really get it till you play this game, how much they hate stuff. Anytime anybody raids any of your provinces, immediately a grudge is issued against them. The longer that grudge takes for you to accomplish, the more critical it becomes. The more critical it becomes, the higher the point cost of it is. You have like this gauge, which will increase. The more points you have in this gauge, the worse your public order becomes. You start losing different benefits and everything. It's kind of annoying. It's not going to break your faction, but it definitely stings. So like a good strategy against the dwarfs: send somebody down into their territory and raid, and then run him up and hide him in a castle. Because they'll immediately get a grudge that says defeat this guy in combat. And if he's on the other side of the world, they're not going to make it to beat you in combat. And they're just going to have a grudge. Just kind of sitting there. The other thing is they can use the underway, which is cool. Them and greenskins can both do that. It allows you to move fast. You can move, like, let's say you're here and there's a mountain range here. Alright? And you want to go here. You would have to march up here and then march over here and then come down here. If you use the underway, you can just jump from here to here. Super cool. You can be intercepted, though. That kind of sucks. So if you like decide to jump from here to here, if there's like an orc somewhere near there, they can go, oh yeah, I'm gonna intercept and fight him in the underway. And so if they fight you in the underway, maybe you had a smaller dwarf unit, you were trying to get to another small dwarf unit so you could fight a big dwarf unit that's sieging you. And if they have lightning battles, or if they have other things that like that could stop you from doing that, then you're going to be fighting a large force with a small force. So you got to be careful with that, but it is very convenient. Greenskins are very similar to that. They have everything. Greenskins, they can't trade. So your dwarves, your empire, they can trade with people. And that's a very strong part of their economy. With the dwarves, I know I'm trading with the empire right now, and I'm bringing in about 1,500 gold per turn off of my trade with the empire just alone. They can only capture dwarven territory, vice versa. Dwarves can only capture other dwarf territory or greenskin territory. They have a fightiness kind of rating, and if it gets too low, they will start to fight themselves. So your orcs will turn on themselves. You will suffer massive attrition very quickly. It's like a little civil war in your camp breaks out. Fightiness goes down when you're just kind of sitting around doing nothing, and it also goes down when you lose battles. So you don't want to lose battles with the green skin, because you'll lose and then you'll start suffering attrition. And that's your fightiness and animosity. Now, if you have like a gauge of fightiness, you know, if your fightiness gets all the way to the top, it goes 100% up, you get a wag, which is like a full-sized army that just appears right next to your army, and boom, now you've got 2 armies. It kind of balances out, because I've played and thought, man, the greenskins are so broken, but I think they did a good job with the wag idea and the fightiness idea. I think that they did a good job of balancing it, because yeah, it's hard to beat that wag, and it's hard to beat, you know, Grimgor with a big thing of black orcs and everything. They're hard to beat, but if you do beat them, they're going to kill themselves off. If you beat them and then you beat them again and then they run and hide and they don't raid and they don't do all that stuff, they're going to lose all their troops. And so it kind of balances out, and it's very, very difficult. They can also use the underway. I described what that is. The cool thing about them is, while they have a limited technology tree, like it says over here, and they can't trade, and limited economic buildings, a lot of their money comes from raiding and sacking and stuff like that. So you get bonus income for raiding and sacking. Your unit upkeep is cheap, so it's easy to upkeep large units without a whole bunch of income. And they have goblin and orc, so it's like getting 2 different armies for one. You could make an orc army, or you could make a goblin army. Orcs have stronger leadership, they're stronger in combat, but they're more expensive. Your goblins, on the other hand, they can fight well, but they don't have really good leadership, so they break and run pretty easy, and they're not incredibly strong, but they can keep up with a bunch of stuff if you mass them, because they're really large units. Where your orcs might be 90 on ultra size, your goblins are 120, so they have a lot of units, and they have poison attacks with the night goblins. I mean, it's like getting 2 different things. The one thing that you will hate playing against them is the Doomdiver Catapult. I think it's a little OP for Grimgor to start with. If you start as Grimgor, see, if you choose your faction, you have 2 options. You can start as either Azog the Slaughterer or Grimgor. If you go with the dwarves, it's the same thing. You have 2. You have 2 for everybody. I'm going to be honest with you. This Doomdiver Catapult is one of the worst things to fight against. It does an unbelievable amount of damage to your infantry. I can't even like describe to you the amount of damage it does to infantry, and it barely ever misses, and it's incredible. It's worse than normal catapults by far. The boar boys are good. Black orcs, which is going to be like your giant, big, well-armored guys that are just bigger, stronger. So yeah, there's the greenskins. I can tell you, playing against them, it felt like playing against the greenskins. I used to play high elves versus greenskins all the time. My friend, I have a friend named Richard. He and I used to play all the time. He was a huge orc player. He liked them because they're random. Orcs are real random. They have a chance to kill themselves. If you fail leadership tests, they have that animosity and they fight themselves. And it just kind of felt like that. When I was playing against them, it felt like that. They didn't have the animosity in combat, but they have that animosity just in kind of general. And then in combat, if you beat them and they start to run, they kind of have that low leadership where they can't get back together easily. They have a lot of monstrous units, but most of their monstrous units have, you know, your low stuff. And then they don't have the best armor either. So let's move to the vampire counts. The vampire counts are a lot of fun. I played with them. They were one of the first. They were the first faction that I did very well with. The first faction that I was making like over 10 grand a turn, and was just really decimating people. And they're just good. One of the things that'll break your game if you're not ready for it is corruption and vampiric influence. So it's kind of like religion in this game. Is you have regular non-corrupted people, or you have chaos corrupted people, or you have vampire influenced people. If you want to really hurt somebody as a vampire counts, you can raise the corruption in their place. They they will hate that. It will cause their public order to go down. It will cause their actually, another mechanic is as the vampiric corruption in a territory goes up, when living units are in that territory, not raiding and not encamped, they will lose stuff due to attrition. So, you know, as vampire counts, part of your defense is walking through your territory is going to take troops from your enemy. Now, vice versa, if there's not enough vampiric corruption, your undead will go away as well. So it's kind of like, if you know, it's you lose going into their realm unless you've corrupted it. So they're cool. Lots of monstrous units. They have really good cavalry. They have really good infantry. They're well rounded. So it's one of those things. This would get me into probably my second concern with this. There's different skills you can take to say it reduces your miscast chance. I've never miscast before, unless of course it's doing something I'm not seeing. I've played Vampire Counts and the Empire and Warriors of Chaos, which are all magic heavy. And I'm going to be honest with you, as the Vampire Counts, I abuse the magic. And as Warriors of Chaos, I did too. Instead of taking a bunch of Hell Cannons, I just take 2 or 3 wizards that knew Fireball. And just fireball things that I didn't like. And just honestly, the magic, in my opinion, is a little overpowered because, you know, for example, a warp gate doesn't open up and swallow your wizard, which is a thing you have to worry about in Warhammer Fantasy. When I was playing this, you know, one of the things you have to worry about is that miscast table, where if you roll a 2 on 2d6 after you've miscast, your dude's gone. And everybody around him is got to roll, or else they're gone too. And so that's one of those things that I kind of miss and I wish was in this game. It might be in it. I might have just been super, super, super lucky, but I doubt it with as much as I've abused it. I mean, we're talking I cast 15 to 20 spells in battle sometimes. Like, I would just, okay, death to that guy, death to that guy, death to that guy, Nahex, invocation, death, 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 Nahex, Nahex, Nahex. And that's all I did was just run around the battlefield with Manfred von Karstein and just cast on people just constantly, and that's all I did the whole game. And I would win because I'd kill all their lords with my assassination spells from the Lord Death. I'd use my vampiric spells to give. Sometimes I would just drop him into combat with like 200-300 people just by himself. He'd get to half health, boom, Nahex invocation, his health is back up. His health gets low again, boom, Nahex. I mean, he unbelievable kills, just slaughtering people left and right because of Nahex invocation and all the other bonuses you can give to him for it. So vampires good. They're magic oriented, so magic's important. A little OP on the magic, just in the game in general. I haven't hit any miscasts. Don't understand why there's technology trees to reduce miscasts, unless it's just like a debuff, you know, where you take a little bit of damage or something. I've never lost a wizard. I'm waiting to see a gate open up and suck my wizard through. Like, it'd be really cool to see like the Hand of Tzeentch come out of the gate, the warp gate, just grab your wizard and just pull him off the battlefield. I mean, that'd be really cool. But they don't do that from what I've seen. So the units are very strong. In some cases, some of them are very weak. Even the very weak units have some possibilities in a battle. I've lost to a bunch of zombies with really elite dwarves before. They just don't go away. That's the one thing that's important. So all the units cause fear, obviously. They're dead bodies that are walking at you. That's going to scare people. Crumbling instead of routing. Units will suffer casualties when losing in combat. So your units will start suffering casualties if their leadership falls to 0. If you kill a percentage of... I wonder if they talk about it. They don't talk about it. Heads up. If you're playing Vampire Counts, and I think it's if you lose 75% of your forces, your army will disintegrate. So sometimes when I'm playing and I'm heavily outnumbered, I'm literally playing the numbers game where I'm trying to slaughter as many of their troops as I can, as fast as I can, to try and keep them from winning just by making their army disintegrate. Because while they might have 2 heroes, a lord, and 4 units of crypt horrors, they had an additional 16 units of zombies, and I wiped all of them out. So now their army's disintegrating, and it's kind of rude. But I mean, it's just sometimes you got to do that because those crypt horrors are hard to kill, and those heroes and lords can really kill you fast. So vampire counts, they play a lot like the Empire, but they're vampires. They have a really cool thing called Raise Dead, and this will be probably the last thing I'll talk about with them. So as you fight battles, you know how you used to have in like Rome and everything in Shogun, you'd have like these little things where like really important battles where thousands and thousands of people's died. There's a little mark on the map to show it. This is where this battle happened in this year. Blah 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 won and this many people died. Well, that's actually useful. So if you are in a territory where there's been a battle where say 2,050, I think the limit's like 12 to 1,500, but like where 2,000 or 3,000 people have died, you can raise dead and get elite units immediately for money. So money for the vampire counts is dark magic. With the dwarfs and Empire, it's gold, and with greenskins, the money is wog, and with warriors of chaos, it's favor, the favor of the gods. But let's say with the vampire counts, I fight this giant battle, and I lose most of my units, and kill a 2,000 person army from say the border princes because they're kind of douchebags. And so I'm standing there, and another big army from the border princes arrives, and I've got a good 15 to 20,000 dark magic. Well, now because there was a huge battle there that they lost 2,000 troops in, I can go in and instead of recruiting, which normally you can just raise dead like 2 or 3 skeleton units, 2 or 3 zombie units, and 1 skeleton spearman unit, and that's your standard. Well, I'm going to go in there. Oh, look, hex wraiths, cairn wraiths, terrorgeist, which are like your zombie dragons, vargeists and vargulfs. Just stuff, all kinds of stuff. You can just raise it 1 turn, you're done, and you can raise as much as you can pay for with your dark magic. So it's very, very strong. Sometimes you can win decisively because you see that they're bringing 2 or 3 very strong armies in, and you only have 1 army, and and then you have like a lord with his army, and they're sitting in a settlement, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna lose this battle. There's no way I can beat them. Oh wait, I've been saving up my dark magic. I've got 25 to 30,000. Hire lord, raise dead, boom, 2 giant armies, done. Just like that. In 1 turn, you have a second giant army, and it can turn the tide very quickly. But like I said, you're going to spend a lot of dark magic to get those units. They're much more expensive than they normally are if you recruit them. So going on to the final, there was a lot of controversy over the Warriors of Chaos. And I know that this has been a long video. I know I've done a lot of ranting and talking about stuff, and I'm going to try and keep it from going over an hour if I can. I know I'm at 48 minutes right now. Warriors of Chaos is so much different from all of the other factions. All of the other factions are different in some ways, but I understand why. I understand why to a degree, and I don't know all of the technicalities. So I know somebody's going to hang me up for this, but I understand why they were saying. I understand why EA was saying, well, look, or Sega or whoever it was, hey, we can't just give you Warriors of Chaos. We have to have it as, pre-order and this other stuff. It costs us money. Everyone's like, well, it's already a faction that's in the game. This faction is 100% different than every other faction in the game, hands down. When you play as the Warriors of Chaos, you do not take settlements. Alright, so as the Warriors of the Chaos, you are Archaon, the Ever-Chosen. You're supposed to lead the Horde down and take over the entire old world and bring about the end times. That's what you're supposed to do. You can start as Archaon, or, and this is one of the only factions where you have 3 lords to start as, 3 legendary lords. Everybody else only has 2. Kolek the Sun Eater, which is a giant dragon ogre Shaggoth. So he's part dragon, part ogre. He's huge, almost as big as like a giant, and almost as tough as giants too. He's pretty solid. And then you have Sigvald the Magnificent. I know Sigval the Magnificent was. I don't think he was a legendary lord. I think he was a legendary hero. But I could be wrong about that. But anyway, so you have these three different dudes that you can play as. They all have their own starting things, and this is another thing with all these other ones. If you look, you get different faction effects for having different people. You get better income for sacking, better diplomatic relations with the undead, and different starting units that are more elite. If you go with different people. The Warriors of Chaos, like I said, it has three. They don't have settlements. Their infrastructure and military improvements are linked to each individual Chaos Horde. So you start with your Horde, right? And it's got its small army. You can encamp wherever you're at. That's where you recruit new units. That's where you build your encampment. That's how you one of the ways in which you get better growth to your Horde. And I couldn't figure out how this worked mentally. I was like, these guys are like really evil and everything. How does this work? I read a book called Riders of the Dead by Dan Abnett this week, and it's an older Chaos book, and I understand a little bit better how this works now, and I might talk about that. I might even do a book review, but I understand what they're talking about. I understand how this works now, as they kidnap people, take them in as prisoners, and their horde grows. Which is why you get growth bonuses for raising villages. The initial challenge is hard. I didn't have a hard time with it. Of course, I played on normal. I haven't played on hard yet. I have not had a hard time with this. They're very good. They have everything except ranged. You have the Hell Cannon, which is really strong for artillery. And then after the Hell Cannon, you have kind of skirmishing units, dudes that are on horseback that'll throw javelins and axes. That's it. You have no more ranged. Whereas, also vampire counts, they have no ranged either. Actually, they have no ranged at all. Vampire counts have no ranged whatsoever. Warriors of Chaos have very little range. They have really, really strong melee. Their cavalry, they're really strong. Their melee infantry is really strong. Their lords are really strong. Their magic's really strong. Just not a lot of, ranged other than, the ones that I just said. Chaos Corruption gets spread as your dudes kind of walk around killing stuff, and like I said earlier, you can't take settlements. That makes things kind of difficult. You have to be careful because wiping out factions is difficult to do. It doesn't make it more difficult to survive because you can have huge hordes and your dude's really strong. And then while you're raiding and stuff like that, you get a lot. You get a lot more favor from the gods, or gold in this case, for sacking settlements with the Warriors of Chaos than you do with anybody else. Most of the time, whenever I'm sacking settlements with like the vampire counts, the greenskins, the dwarves, the empire, you get a good amount. With vampire counts, I can go out, I can get 10,000, maybe 15,000. With the Warriors of Chaos, I was getting 20,000 on a lot of the big cities, like constantly. It's consistent. Their technology tree helps you get more money for sacking settlements. When you raise settlements with them, you get an increase to your growth, which allows you to build your horde up bigger, build new units. The growth works exactly like cities. For your horde can grow in size, and your main tent gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and goes up that tier. And then after it goes up the tier, you get new additions where you can recruit better stuff. So you start out recruiting things like Chaos Marauders, which are like your Norska units, the Norsemen. They're like Vikings, effectively. And then as you increase your tents and everything, you can get Chaos Warriors, which are like super powerful infantry, then the Chosen, and so on and so forth. Trolls, Chaos Giants, Dragon Ogres. There's a bunch of really cool stuff. Really cool monstrous infantry. However, when it comes to the Warriors of Chaos, in order to get a new Lord, you have to establish a new Horde. In order to do that, you have to have growth. So you have to have growth to do two things. You have to have growth set aside, or surplus growth set aside, to build new lords, new armies, and then you also have to have surplus growth to upgrade your settlement. So you kind of have to balance. Like, you have to know when it's time to build a second army, because as soon as you build that second army, he's going to get ganked by a bunch of really strong armies from your enemy. So a little bit of strategy in how you do that. But yeah, they can't trade. Their economy is heavily reliant on sacking, raiding, and battle loot. And they don't people don't like you. I mean, you're chaos. You just want to kill everything. Uh, but yeah, so they're really good. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, they're different. They're a lot different than most of the other stuff. I'm about to sneeze. Whew. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I hate sneezing when I'm on camera, but I hate sneezing in general. But yeah, so there's the basics of all of this game. My overall, like, thumbs up, thumbs down for this game, I'd have to say is a very hearty 2 thumbs up. While there are some things like the miscast system, the embedded heroes system, the heroes maybe being a little too powerful. This feels kind of like Hero Hammer sometimes. I played against a guy, not a guy, but a computer the other day, Vampire Counts, and I had a big army, and he had a big army of crap units with 5 heroes in it. And those heroes just kind of rode around, slaughtering my dudes. I couldn't take them out fast enough. And so I think heroes are a little overpowered. I think the reason they did that is because you can't embed them. I wish they would add the embedding. And the other thing is magic equipment. You get magic equipment randomly for fighting people and stuff like that. And your legendary lords, they have their quests for magic equipment, which is really a cool option. You don't just get it because you hit a level. But one of the things that I wish is your common magic items and uncommon magic items you could purchase. I wish while you were in large cities you could actually purchase those if you had like a rune forge or something. That would be really cool. Like, hey, I want to give this dude this, this, and this. It's going to cost 10, 15, 20,000 gold to give him, an axe of slaying or something like that. Some kind of like really good runic weapon as the dwarves or the empire, that would make sense to me. In the Warhammer game, you could buy your magic items, you could kit it out. The limitations were that you could only have 1 item per area. You couldn't have 2 weapons. You couldn't have 2 helmets or 2 armor places. Makes sense. That's obvious. The other thing is that you couldn't have the same item on 2 different characters in the same army. So I couldn't have a sword of biting on my lord and a sword of biting on my Thane or my heroes. That would be another limitation they'd have to put on to make sure you don't just like kit everybody out with the exact same stuff. The idea was that magic items were not super rare for an army. An army or a nation could get them. Lords and stuff, they would have them, but they're rare enough that you wouldn't see multiples in the same army. And I like that, and I think that that'd be fun. I think that that would be a really cool way to introduce stuff. Is like, hey, look, your rare magic items and stuff, yeah, you're going to get those from quests, you're going to find those after battle, or whatever. You might sometimes be able to buy them, but you can buy your magic items for your lords if you would like. And that would be cool. That would be a way if they like tone down your lords. You could take items that would make them a little bit tougher so that they might be able to run around. Having a lord run around the battlefield outside of a unit would be kind of rare, but you would know that guy's got nice stuff on him and he's going to be hard to kill because he's not in a unit. So overall, I think that it does a good job of bringing Total War and Warhammer together. It's not realistic. It's not supposed to be realistic because it is fantasy. But you still get that Total War feel. Man, Total War, it was a pretty realistic franchise, but at the same time, man, it's a game. It's a war game. So there's going to be part of that, like in real life, you'd have to set up your tactics and strategies and stuff like that before the battle, and then your individual captains for your different platoons and stuff like that, they would enact the plans and strategies that you told them to do, and then they would have to do the rest on their own merit. I mean, with all the Warhammer books I read about, the battles and stuff that happen, you have your dude that's leading this little brick of infantry, then he's telling the dude, alright, we're going to advance to this point, alright, we're going to do this. They wait for the attack order, they know their job, but it's up to each individual unit. You, as a leader of an army, wouldn't be able to go in the middle of battle, okay, I need you to circle around and do this and this intricate thing over here. So there's some unrealisticness to the strategic and tactical gameplay, as is for army-on-army clashes. And so, you just got to deal with some of that unrealisticness because it's the best we can do as far as a game is concerned. And I think that this game does a good job of that. I think overall that the game feels very good. I think that they did a good job of bringing all of this together. And overall, I think it's a great purchase. I think it's a great buy. It's a new thing. It's just new. It's fun. But anyway, I give my thumbs up to this beer. I give my thumbs up to this game. Hopefully you guys might see me stream some of this. Y'all might see me put some of this up on YouTube with me actually playing. I think that might be the next thing that I do. Show you guys some of the way the gameplay works. But I have a hard time talking in depth like this and playing at the same time. And I'm not well enough established to be able to overlap my talking with stuff with editing yet. I would like to get there one day, but just not right now. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. I'm at the 1 hour mark, so I think I'm going to let you guys go. But this is Colby with Nothing Yet Studios, and I hope that you guys try this game out. And I hope you guys hit me up with some comments and let me know, what do you think about Warhammer Total War? Have you played it yet? Are you going to play it? What are your thoughts on it? What do you like or dislike? Maybe I could do some videos addressing some of y'all's complaints or concerns. Sometimes some of them I'll probably agree with, some of them I won't agree with. It would be great to have those discussions. And like I said, this is Colby with Nothing Yet Studios. I hope you have a good day, and I will see you guys next time.